Hey, what's up guys, you good Gypsy, and we are back here today. I got some more content for you guys. We got NPL Playoffs Round 1. We're going up against Rob, Rob Jr., the GOAT. And yeah, Rob's a very good friend of mine, and he's a guy we played earlier on in the season. He's from our division, or our conference thing, so yeah, he made it to playoffs, and he's a massive threat Round 1, so yeah, it's going to be definitely a nice intro to playoffs. As you guys can see, his team to the right there, very threatening. You know, he's got the Thunder and the Victini, which they themselves pose probably the biggest threat to my team offensively. Although the Azelf is quite threatening, depending on its set. Stuff like Mega Sharpedoes and Primarina also demand a lot of respect, because those waters are very strong versus me. Obviously, I do have the Tang and stuff like Hydra, which can switch into the Sharpedo, as well as stuff like Persian. Obviously Sharpedo gets Ice Fang, but Tang chews those, and if Hydra Scarfed, it can outspeed. So that's basically like his threats on his side. He has a lot of fat stuff like Hippo, Scizor, which I expect to be a really bulky set if he does decide to bring it. Stuff like Roserade as well has a potential to be really bulky versus me, being able to check stuff like Tangrowth and Suicune, even stuff like Hydreigon if it is like a really spit F variant. So that's something to keep in mind. He's got fairly nice checks to Diancie, as I mentioned earlier, in the forms of Scizor, like offensively checking it as well as switching into Moonblast. If he's Aquaberry, which is the set he opted to bring last game, then this will be a pretty solid switch into Diancie, you know, not fearing getting bopped by an HP Fire on the switch. And if he brings a Spit F Hippo, which is definitely a possibility, that can also function as a very nice Diancie check. So a lot of things are going through my mind as we move into building for this game. But basically, this is the team that I did bring this week, and I've chosen to bring Mons because I really feel as though he's going to bring a certain team of 6 that I think is going to give him the best chance against stuff like Scarfed Hydreigon. And I really feel as though he's going to leave stuff like Mega Sharpedo on the bench this week, just because I have obtained Tang since the last time we played, and yeah, Tangrowth, physically defensive monster, you know, checks checks the Sharpedo a lot better than my former team did. So I feel like in its place, Primarina is definitely likely to come. Hydreigon gave Rob a lot of trouble last game, even though he had Ordino. It was a Fizz Def Ordino, and Hydreigon just kind of claimed to kill or heavily dented something every time it came in last game. So I really feel as though Primarina is likely to come. Those are kind of my thoughts just going into this. We're going to run over the team that I've opted to bring this week, and starting off we have Diancie. So didn't bring Mega Diancie last game, but we do have it this week, and as you guys can see, it's a pretty interesting spread and moveset. Diamond Storm here with a little bit of physically offensive investment can really punish stuff like the Primarina, the Roserade, the Scizor too. Like, unless he's like a really bulky Scizor, that thing is cleanly getting 2-KO'd with Diamond Storm. If I get the defense boost, I don't even fear a Bullet Punch, unless he's like offensive, which I will be able to determine by the damage he takes. And yeah, Karma and Moonblast, pretty interesting combination versus his team. But if I can get a Toxic off on the Hippo during the match, I can Carmine as he switches out to it later on and fire off a really powerful Moonblast. Carmine also helps soften the blow from stuff like Thunderous, stuff like Special Victini. Victini is another one that I am expecting to come this game. He didn't bring it last game, but it's a pretty fantastic breaker, being able to break through stuff like Celesteela, which is a real big threat to his team. So I feel like Victini is more than likely going to come, and I feel like a special variant is his best option versus me, because I do have stuff like Hydreigon, which can switch in kind of well on a V-Create, unless he's banded, of course. And yeah, Special Teeny just is a bit better versus me, and this Diancie actually switches in quite nicely, especially if I'm not Mega Evolved. I do outspeed the Diancie's, the Victini, if he's like Timid Max Speed, as you can see here. And yeah, this Diancie, quite an interesting spread. You guys haven't really seen me run such a bulky Diancie before, but there's a lot of reasons why I ran this set. With this special defense investment, I avoided 2-KO from Thundarus' T-Bolt, which is kind of crazy. Provided rocks aren't up. It's a very nice check to stuff like Thundarus lacking Iron Tail. And yeah, Toxic is just really nice. The Fire versus the Ordino and the Hippodon. Obviously Toxic like means that Ordino can't just stand and wish Ice Beam versus me. I can also Calm Mind up in its face and just start firing off powerful Moonblast, which is really solid. So the next one we have on the team is Celesteela. This is like, it's just amazing versus Rob. Going especially defensive this week because I want to be able to live a Thundy's T-Bolt if I have to. I can live a Thundy's T-Bolt after rocks from a Life Orb Thundy, which is just nuts. Although I don't expect him to run Life Orb, I think he'll run Z Fighting. Versus me, as I mentioned last game, it is the best set he can bring versus me. And yeah, this Selly just walls a lot of his team. It has the potential to wall a lot of his team, I should say. Depending on what sort of Primarina set he is, this can actually switch in and take it on 1v1 with Heavy Slam and Leech Seed. Getting residual health back from Leech, and with the addition of Protect means this Mon can heal up relatively nicely versus his team. Flamethrower obviously is my best way of dealing with Scizor. Could have ran Fire Blast, but like Flamethrower is fine. It's still like 2 KOs and OKOs if he's like offensive, which is solid. So yeah, the Selly is quite a standard Celesteela, but very effective nonetheless. It's a very nice switch into a lot of the mons on his team. Hippodon can't touch me. I can wear it down with Leech Seed. As I mentioned, this is a nice switch into stuff like Moonblast, Locked, Primarina, which is solid. And yeah, it's just a very nice response to a lot of his mons, and it forms a nice defensive core with my Tangrowth and even my Persian and my Landorus. So the next one we have is Persian. So this is a pretty interesting set. Nice fur coat because I can switch into Sharpedo easier. If he does decide to bring it, I don't have to necessarily go hard into my Tang. So I can easily tank Crunches and Ice Fangs with ease because my defense is doubled. Hidden Power Fire blows away the Scizor. I am max special attack Life Orb, which also does kind of bluff that I'm Technician with a hidden power of choice. Foul Play does a lot to his team. With Life Orb, I'm just dealing huge amounts of damage. T-Bolt kills Mega Sharpedo after a round of rocks, so I'm going to go into that in my next mon, but I plan on getting rocks up turn 1. But Thunderbolt, yeah, very nice to be able to just OHKO the Sharpedo after it's taken a round of rocks. And it actually 2 KOs the Primarina, which is a bit ridiculous. Unless it's like a Soul Vest or like max HP. And if rocks are up, it's guaranteed on max HP, which is just wild. Like, this thing is crazy. And, you know, why does this cat get T-Ball? That's what I'm kind of thinking. But yeah, very, very fun mon in this matchup. Parting Shot is really nice, as it really softens the blows my defensive of his offensive mons as I pivot into defensive mons on my team like Celesteela and Tangrowth. So getting like a -1 off on a Selly, off on a Primarina I should say, which could potentially be Specs, is going to really, really be nice for my Selly and my Tang. As well as stuff like Thundy and Victini. But I'll most likely be foul playing versus those guys. This is important as it gives me a way of checking like a boosted weakened Thundy, because the only other mon on my team that outspeeds Thundy is my Scarfed Hydra at the end. So having another mon to outspeed that is pretty crucial because Thundy's a massive threat versus me. So very nice, very fun mon in this matchup. And now we have my nice my nice lead Lando. This is Rocky MZ, and you guys see the edge. Obviously that looks like I'm just going to be dropping Continental Crushes on something, but this Rocky MZ is there's multiple reasons why I have this. Obviously, Stone Edge is really powerful with a Rocky MZ. I can just blow away like a Victini or a Thundy. But the main reason I have this is to check like a Taunt lead Azelf to stop him from preventing me from getting my hazards up. I just press Z Stealth Rocks and they go up turn 1, which is really crucial because rocks plus stuff like Hydreigon, Persian, and Celesteela force a lot of switches, as well as obviously Diancie. And getting that rocks chip versus a team like Rob's is really important. He's got Thundy and Victini who are weak to rocks, so they're not going to appreciate coming in every time I'm taking 25. The rest of his team doesn't appreciate it either. He doesn't have the best, he doesn't really have any healing outside of Wish Aldino, which is solid. And if he does decide to bring that, I've got a free switch into either Selly or my Diancie every time that comes in. So that's quite nice. Getting rocks chip is just essential in this game, as it really makes Celesteela's job of forcing switches that much nicer for me. I can yield a lot more dividends with having rocks up. So that's basically the Lando. I do have a bit of a complicated spread, but I do avoid max special attack, hidden power ice from stuff like Thundy and Azelf with the spread. This defensive investment allows me to take an Adamant Ice Fang from Sharpedoes after the Intimidate, and this speed allows me to outspeed like max speed Sizz, but mainly to outspeed like a slower Roserade. So yeah, pretty nice spread on this Leno, and this moveset is quite nice. If I can get rocks up and then U-turn out, I can go out into something like my Selly or my Persian on something, or even my Tangrowth on something like a Hippo that may want to switch into this. If it does have Ordino, I just do have the U-turn to just get out of there. I'm not trying to catch an Ice Beam. Second game in a row, and I can just U-turn out into my Diancie. So the next one we have is Ticks and Leeches, my Tangrowth. You know, shout out to that subscriber of mine who actually knew what these like nicknames were referring to. He's a real one. People are always wondering why I nickname my mons this way, but yeah, the real ones understand, the enlightened ones understand. So yeah, we got the Solvest Tang here. This is a pretty nice defensive Tang. I do need to have defensive answers to Sharpedo, even if I don't expect it to be coming this game. This Tang also doubles as a somewhat decent check to Specs Prim if it's locked into Hydro Pump, you know, expecting my Selly to come in. If I reveal my Selly to be Spit F, he may be reluctant to spam Moonblast and instead to click Water Stab, which this Tang can take reasonably well. Obviously I'm not very specially defensively invested, as I do need this investment to live crunches after rocks, to avoid 2-KO from crunch after rocks from an Adamant Sharpedo, but knocking off Primarina's potential specs or like boosting item with knockoff is going to be important. Giga Drain blows away Shark after rocks. Rock Slide is so I have a reliable way of dealing about half to Thundy, so Thundy can't just set up in my face. I can 2-KO that with Rock Slide, and if rocks are up, then it's a guaranteed 2-KO. I don't have to worry, even if he's a little bit bulky. Rock Slide's definitely taking him out in 2 hits. Hidden Power Fire, just if this is pretty standard. Knockoff is very nice versus his team, particularly if I have rocks up. Just spamming Knockoff is very nice versus his team, removing stuff like Lefties from Ordino, removing Ockerberries from Scizor, removing you know, boosting items and stuff like Victini and Thundy, and it does allow me to determine if his Thundy is a Z move if he switches in hard on Tang, so that's pretty nice. So the last one we have is Scarfed Hydreigon, rocking a much bulkier Hydra spread this week. With a modest nature, this basically allows Hydra to kind of bluff, maybe not being a specs, a Scarf set this week, and potentially like a plate set. The fact that I am so bulky as well is really nice because it will allow me to pivot into attacks easier, and you know, be an immediate offensive presence, as I will outspeed his team with his given investment and the choice scarf, and I will be packing, you know, that modest new max special attack, which is kind of crazy. This spread allows me to live +2 signal beam from Azelf as well after rocks, which is pretty crazy. I think without rocks up, something like that. But yeah, very strong versus his team. I do have U-turn here because I'm not trying to get predicted and just like hard-walled by Primarina. If he does bring in Prim, I just U-turn on that and go out into something to threaten it. Draco and Dark Pulse very nice versus his team. With his modest nature, I'm going to be hitting even harder than I was last game, and just spamming Dark Pulse is just very nice versus Rob's team as a whole. Once the rocks are up, like his team just struggles to switch into this monster. Sleep Talk is here so I can switch into Roserade and fire off hopefully a Draco, blowing that thing away if it is partially weakened, if it's taken around rocks and some chip. That's going to be a very nice way of just surprising him there with the Sleep Talk. Sleep Talk was a bit of a, Sleep Powder was a bit of an issue last game. He could well have managed to put my Celesteela asleep if he'd actually landed the Sleep Powders, which would have forced me to burn sleep turns with that. So that was a bit of a thing to look out for this game, and having Sleep Talk on a choice locked mon is a pretty solid way of abusing that, as your opponent may opt to switch out, predicting you to make a safe switch. Like in the case of Rob potentially sleeping my Hydra, he may switch out to something to take on my Celesteela, which is a pretty obvious switch into Roserade after something is being sacked off to sleep, so he may go out into his Thundy or his Victini, expecting my Selly to come in. If I've got Sleep Talk, I can blow them either away with a Dark Pulse or a Draco, or even just get U-turn momentum out into something on my team. So yeah, that's the team versus Rob. Very, very happy with this team. Spent a lot of time on it. Because I did feel like my prep in my week 6 game when I played Rob was pretty subpar. I remember I changed the Selly set to like AV last minute, and it was just really underperformed. Rob bought a fantastic Ordino set that just put on a ton of pressure to my team, and yeah, really had to step up the prep this game. So pretty excited with the team, pretty happy about that. And we'll jump into the matches. Alright, so here the match up against Rob, and as you guys can see, he's opted not to bring the Sharpedo, and he has brought the Primarina. So like I spoke about in the team builder, I really felt as though Sharpedo had less of an ideal matchup this week as opposed to the last time we played, just due to me having Tang, Persian, just like a bit of a physically bulkier team this time around. He has opted to bring the Prim, so that's probably more than likely like a bulkier switching to Hydreigon, but it could also be just like a Specs Prim, as that thing is a beast, and yeah, it's not fun to switch into. So gonna have to scout that out, but we'll see what happens with that as we get into the match. But he's also brought the Sizz, so yeah, he's got the Diancie check on deck. Interestingly enough, he has brought the Hippo, which I felt, unless this is Shed Shell, like this could well be Shed Shell to like prevent him from being trapped by a Gothita, which I did bring last game, and is actually pretty solid versus the team he's brought today. So that could be Shed Shell, just a team matchup. It might also be lefties just to check a Lando better, and a Diancie. But yeah, interestingly enough, he has brought the Hippo, so this means his Azelf probably isn't Rocks, so that's something to keep in mind. Don't know what the Thunder is, probably use E-Fight as I did mention earlier, and this Victini could be anything, but more than likely a special variant. So gonna jump into the game. As I mentioned, like Rocks are critical. Look at his team and look at Rocks. Super effective, 12%, 12%, 6, 12%. So like Rocks plus Hydra plus Selly plus Diancie can really put the pressure on. So gonna lead off with Lando here. He does lead off with Azelf. I get the Intimidate drop, which is nice if he's like Ice Punch. And in case he is a taunt lead Azelf, I am just gonna Z move and go for Z Rocks here, which you know, may seem like a bit of a waste because he did just click Psychic, but in the off chance that he was taunt, which is a set that Rob has run almost every week of the season, getting Rocks up turn 1 is well worth taking, you know, blowing my Z move and taking 67, because Rocks in the long term are really gonna pay dividends. So gonna take a nice chunk from that Psychic. That did 67, and I'm a very bulky Landorus with some Spit F investment, so this is 100%. It's 100% specs. This is also potentially like modest Twisted Spoon, but it's more than likely Timid specs. So I'm just going to switch out here, go into my Celesteela, as he does go into his Hippo. So this means free rocks for him, but it also means Leech Seed for me. So what Leech here does is forces Hippo in a situation where he's more than likely going to want to switch unless he's got Whirlwind. But the fact that he's leeched, when people are leeched, they typically tend to want to switch out. So this is going to result in another leech here, off on something versus his team. He did get rocks up, and that's okay. Like, this means that he's more than likely not default assist. This gives me some important information. This means that he's probably going to be that SD, bulky, U-turn, bullet punch roost set that he brought last game. And the nice thing about that is, like, yes, rocks up on my side are a bit annoying, but not nearly as much as they annoy him. And I do have leech recovery in my team. I've got a fairly bulky team, so I'm pretty happy with that exchange. I can just fire off another leech here, as he does go into his Victini. So Victini's now at 63, which is really nice. So it hasn't done anything. It's come in and taken rocks, and it's now at 63 after leech. So I am just going to go for a protect here, as he does go for glaciate, confirming my suspicions that this is a special teeny. So this is solid. If he predicts my Hydreigon to come in and goes for Dazzling Gleam here on a potential blue flare, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. I'm going to potentially lose such a fantastic offensive mon in this matchup. So I'm just going to go hard out into my Diancie. It can shoot anything. I'm in base form, so I do have like 150 in both defenses, and I've got the leech seed up. So even if he does go for Energy Ball, I tank, and I can immediately threaten out this Victini. But Energy Ball would be a pretty wild play there from my opponent, as you know, I could go out to like Tangrowth or Hydreigon, just scouting for the blue flare. So he is going to go for the blue flare. It only does 21. That's kind of wild. So my Diancie is going to be able to Mega Evolve here and just fire off the Diamond Storm. I opted not to go for the Toxic there, predicting Hippo to come in, because going for Diamond Storm awarded me information on the Hippo, which was nice. And if I got the defense raise, I can go for Toxic the next turn as it tries to roost up versus my DNC, expecting me to switch out to my Cell Sealer on an Earthquake. So going for Diamond Storm awarded me information on this Sizzle. So this is indeed a bulky Sizzle. So this is pretty similar to what he brought last game. Probably the same spread actually, because that was quite effective. And I'm now just going to go out to my Cell Sealer. If he roosts up, that's okay. I just get another Leech Seed off. And if he chooses to attack me though with Bullet Punch, I immediately threaten out this Sizzle. So he's going to roost up and now proceed to go for a U-turn. We chew, that does 7. So we're going to get all that back with the lefties, and he's now going to go into his Azov. So I go for Heavy Slam here. I go for Heavy Slam because I knew his Sizzle was going to be faster than me, and I felt like him going out into either Victini or Thundy was his play there. If he went out into Victini, Heavy Slam killed, whereas Leech Seed didn't kill. He would have taken rocks, and then after a round of Leech Seed, still been alive. But if I went for Heavy Slam, his Victini would have died after rocks, and I would have got a Speed F boost, meaning I could take on Thundy even nicer. And if he did go into Azov, which is a pretty solid mon, because it can live a Heavy Slam, as you guys saw, it would also capitalize quite nicely on a Leech, as it could just fire off a T-Bolt or a Flamethrower or anything versus my team. But because I am Protect, I can scout what he wants to lock himself into. I've confirmed that he is a spec set, so he does go for Flamethrower there, so I can just go out into my Hydreigon here and just threaten something. This is really nice because now, like, it still has a chunk, like, still has 24 specs. Azelf is quite strong, but it's nice because now I can just go for U-turn. It's going to take out the Azelf, it's going to get momentum on Hippo or Sizz if they want to come in, and if he wants to go into Prim, I get information and I get momentum. So that's what's going to happen here. He's going to go into Prim, and we get 9% off with that U-turn, so that's not bad. He doesn't reveal lefties though, so this could be like this could still be a Specs Prim. That's definitely something I'm considering. I am going to go for the Leech Seed this turn, I believe, though, as if he is Specs Prim, he has to hit Hydro to like come closer to it KOing me, and with Leech into Protect, I can get a lot of that damage back, a lot of that health back, and proceed to switch out to Tang if he is indeed Specs. So he's going to go out to Teeny here, as we just soak up those seeds. He's going to now switch out into Thundy, wanting to preserve Victini as Death Fodder, which was a really good play, as I more than likely was just going to Protect there. Didn't really lose a ton by it. I did lose offensive momentum by protecting, but had he stayed in there and blue flared, I would have taken a chunk on my Selly. Had he gone for Dazzling Gleam, predicting me to make the Hydreigon play there, I would have potentially lost Hydreigon. I'd rather him go out hard out into Thundy, take the Rocks chip, than potentially lose him on there to Victini. So he's going to bring in Thundy here. I'm just going to go hard out into my Assault Vest Tang. I contemplated this turn for about a minute or so. Double Dance is definitely a threat versus me, but he more than likely needs Hidden Power Ice and Focus Blast, as well as T-Bolt versus me, and I did feel like he would bring that set. He's going to go for the Nasty Plot here, and because we are Assault Vest, we do take this Hidden Power Ice, and we can deal crucial damage off with the Rock Slide. You see Rock Slide did 50 there, so we get a fairly like mid-roll on the Thundy. Had we got a high roll, had we got like a slightly high roll, he would have been in range of rocks, which would have been nice, but it would have forced his Thundy to stay in basically. Or he could have just preserved it as a death, as just Death Fodder. But because he's at 26, he will be able to switch in one more time. So after sacking off my Tang, I am going to go into my Persian, which can outspeed and threaten this thing with a foul play. And he's going to go into Primarina here, so Thundy lives to see another day. This will switch in at 1% later on in the game, so smart play switching out there. Now he's going to go into his Primarina, and he's going to take 16 from the foul play. This reveals that he's like a very, very bulky Primarina, because it should do at least 19 if he's just offensive. So I do have T-Bolt, and T-Bolt can kill from this range, but if he's max HP and potentially Assault Vest, which I thought he might be, like Assault Vest is kind of bad versus me, but if he was Assault Vest, then I just lose my Persian here, and Persian is really nice for his team. Like, kills Thundy, kills Sizzle with Hidden Power Fire, unless he's Ockerberry, kills Victini. Victini's dead to rocks basically, kills the Azelf, which is basically dead to rocks too, and is a Psychic resist, which is nice. and parting shots around versus his team. So I'm just going to parting shot here, go out into my Celestealer, as this is a very nice switch into this Prim, as he is actually going to go for the rest here. So this means that he's a rest talk set. Instantly like a weight off my shoulders. This is not spec, so this means that this is easier to take on with my team. Obviously, like, it means that it can check Hydra more effectively because it is rest talk, and it means it's going to be a bit of a pain to take out, but Selly takes this on 1v1. I do have Leech Seed, I do have Heavy Slam, and even if this is a max HP set with Leech Seed, Heavy Slam's to a KO. So we're going to go for Leech here, as he does go into his Hippodon. Sorry, I go for Heavy Slam there. I think I went for Heavy Slam there, predicting something. I felt as though he'd switch there, he wouldn't stay in with Prim, and if he did stay in with Prim, I gained information on his defensive spread. I knew he was like probably max HP by the damage the foul play did, but getting Heavy Slam damage off would be really nice, as I would be able to 3 KO him, even if he was like defensive. So that was pretty solid. I'm just going to go for the Heavy Slam, as even if he brings in Hippo, I can just Heavy Slam once again, expecting him to go into Thundy potentially there. But even if he slacks off up, that's fine. I can just start leeching and beat this 1v1, unless this is Whirlwind, in which case it would be able to phase me out. I can just sit in front of this thing all day and take it on. He reveals Ice Fang, so he's Earthquake, Rocks, slack off Ice Fang. Basically walled by my Selly. So I am just going to start clicking Flamethrower, I think, as he goes out to Victini. So at this point I do reveal Flamethrower, so a pretty obvious bring in this matchup because Scizor is a threat to me. But now he's going to bring in Thundy. I'm going to sack off Lando because it has served its purpose. Lando the God did what it needed to do, and it's not really doing too much versus the rest of his team. I've burnt its Z-move, so it can't like deal massive damage to Prim, and it is the most expendable mon at this point. So he's going to fire off the all-out pummeling there. Fair enough from his part. In case I had switched out into my Scarfed Hydra, I'd revealed this to be Scarfed, and if I'd gone out to Hydra on his nasty plot, I could have threatened it immediately and basically cancelled out any ground that he just made that turn. So sacking Lando to the all-out pummeling was my play there. I can now just go for a U-turn, as he's going to go into his Hippodon, and I believe I do just go out into my Celestealer here again, as I can just fire off a Leech. So yeah, Selly really proving to be a big roadblock for Rob. He's just having trouble breaking it because I do have my rocks up, which are chipping down his best Selly responses every time they come in. And with Leech up, as well as Protect, they just having a really hard time taking me on. I get a burn here, which is definitely annoying. I was spamming Flamethrower in case he went into Scizor, or in case he went, in case he went into anything really. Flamethrower was dealing more than Heavy Slam was, and it meant he had to burn his slack offs more. He had to burn his slack offs quicker than he did if I was just clicking Heavy Slam. I think Heavy Slam did less than Flamethrower. I could be wrong, but going for a burn there was my play anyway, as getting more residual chip on this puts it closer and closer in range to dying, and burns his slack offs there. But unfortunately for Rob, he does get burnt there, as Thundy is just going to get sacked off here. Now Primarine is going to come in here. Oh no, he brings in Azelf this time. I'm getting ahead of myself. He brings in Azelf. I can just go for Protect here. I know this is specs. I'm not about to like choke my weak on away, as he does go for the trick. He's going to double out to Sizz, expecting my DNC to come in. It's a nice play, but it doesn't really matter because I can just go back out to Selly, as Azelf is now dead to rocks. He's going to U-turn here, and he's going to go out into his Primarina, which is nice because I can just get off a Leech Seed here. He's going to reveal Rest Talk, and he's going to go for an Encore. So he is Encore Primarina, and he told me after the game he was actually Moonblast on this set as well. So it was like just infinitely walled by the Celestealer. As now I have the Leech Seed off, this thing is just going to be giving me back a ton of health, and I just go for the Heavy Slam this turn, as he does Sleep Talk or Rest. Heavy Slam does 70% with a crit, so without a crit it would have done like high 40s, mid to high 40s, which would have put it in range to die to obviously a second Heavy Slam. If he hadn't got a crit that turn, he would have been out of range of Leech Seed, which would have meant that he needed to rest the following turn on my second Heavy Slam, and then he'd need to burn 2 turns of sleep, so he'd be at around like 50, 60, and still needing to bird 2 turns of sleep, and I would just spam heavy slam and take him out there. But that crit was still nonetheless quite annoying because he could have chose to sack off his Azelf, for example. But if he'd sacked off Azelf to remove the seeds from Primarina, it didn't really change much, because if he went out to Hippo, I just leeched. If he went out to Sizz, I just flamethrowed. Like, it just kind of repeated itself. Celesteela basically has the game at this point, but it's still a bit annoying, like getting a crit like that when Rob could have potentially like thought he could have played around it, but in actual fact, he told me after the game, you know, he knew that Prim was getting to a KO there regardless. So he did end up just forfeiting, because Celesteela does win this game at this point. There's nothing he can do. Azelf is dead to rocks, Hippo is walled, Scissor is walled, so Rob's just going to forfeit. I totally understand. Totally understand that. So they would have just wrapped up the game. No point dragging this game out. So that's going to be my round 1 game versus Rob. Definitely want to congratulate Rob on a really solid season. This was his first time in the majors, and he made it to playoffs in his first season. So that's definitely a big accomplishment, and he took out a lot of big names along the way. He definitely could have had a few more wins in the regular season as well, were it not for hacks. I know he got haxed in a few very important games, as a couple of us did. But yeah, nonetheless, he did make it to playoffs, and unfortunately, he had a pretty stiff matchup in this round 1 game. Although he had massive offensive threats on his team, like Thundy and Victini, with stuff like Celesteela on my team and Tangrowth, once rocks were up and with no removal on his team, he opted to bring probably the Swords Dance Scizor that I mentioned earlier. Rocks were just an immense pain for his team to deal with. So I know next season he's definitely going to want to draft better hazard removal. But you know, that being said, he definitely still brought it this game. That Thundy could have been a real threat if I didn't have like a fat Tang in the back. If he was agility, obviously I had like Scuffed, Hydra and Persian, but if he was an agility set, that could have been a real problem. Obviously very happy the way my team performed. Yeah, it definitely performed as I had hoped when I built it, and that's always good to see. But yeah, definitely go and check out Rob's side of the match. He's definitely like a young prodigy in the format, an up-and-coming beast. He's already made a name for himself. He's not like an up-and-coming player. He's already up. So that's pretty sick. But yeah, hopefully we'll get to face Rob next season. I know he's going to be around next season, and that should be fun if we do stick around for season 8 of the NPL. And yeah, always good to play Rob. So make sure you guys go and check out his side of the match. Go check out all the rest of the players who are in the playoffs. If you're not already subbed to them, I know the Verd is playing Cheese Boy, so that's going to be definitely a hype match. Go and watch that. And then you got Monotui versus Blake in the other conference, as well as Trev versus Riz. So lots of excitement. Go check out that, and yeah, enjoy. It's a very fun time to be an NPL fan. So hope you guys enjoy that. This has been it. It's like 2 AM, so apologies for if this recording was a bit long-winded, but I'm gonna go to sleep. Hope you guys enjoyed it.